Iran putting a halt to its military operations against Israel, at least for now, after an escalation in strikes between the two countries, the most intense since a truce was reached in April. The US president calling on both sides to, quote, stop shooting, insisting that final negotiations on peace are proceeding. Iran fired a barrage of missiles on Israel overnight after Israel targeted Iranian-backed group Hezbollah in the southern suburbs of Beirut. The IDF says Iran has fired nearly 30 missiles since Sunday. Iran warning of harsher attacks if Israel should strike Hezbollah in Lebanon again. Meanwhile, Yemen's Houthi rebels are firing 2 missiles towards Israel overnight and pledged to stop Israel's maritime navigation in the Red Sea. Israel says it targeted military sites in the Islamic Republic, including a petrochemical complex in the southwest, and dismantled Iranian defense systems across several parts of the country. Donald Trump reportedly urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to retaliate against Iranian strikes. Well, we're joined by Blake Sifton. He's covering this story for CNN in Tel Aviv, and Nick Harper in Washington, D.C. Blake, let's start with you. Israel, in the last half hour, certainly coming out to say Israel's Channel 12, citing officials, if Hezbollah attacks on Israeli towns continue, Israel will attack Beirut's southern suburbs. So that message from Iran and this message from Israel, what should we read into what's happening right now on this conflict?
Good evening. Well, I think it suggests that neither side essentially knows what will happen. The situation here is calm, but remains very tense. Businesses have been opened. People are going about their day, but there is very much a sense of how close we are and have come to a full return to full-scale war. The authorities here have ordered schools closed across the country. Hospitals have been ordered to carry out their operations below ground in fortified structures. Israeli authorities say that all of the ballistic missiles that were fired both by Iran and by the Houthi militia in Yemen were either downed by air defenses or landed in open areas. There were no deaths or injuries, but there was damage sustained to an Israeli settlement in the West Bank. The military says that the U.S. military assisted in downing some of those missiles, but that the wave of bombings that were carried out in Iran was carried out by the Israeli military alone. Now, as you say, Iran says that if Israel doesn't attack Lebanon anymore, then these attacks by Iran are over. It's unclear and understood that it's not been decided yet how Israel will respond to that ultimatum. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is meeting his security cabinet tonight at 9 p.m. The Israeli military had said they expected this conflict to go on for several days, and they say they are ready for both defense and attack.
Nick, let's bring you in here. Earlier today, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman saying no one believes the Israeli regime would take any action without coordination with the United States. And Donald Trump coming out to say both sides need to stop shooting at each other. What's happening now? How will that affect what Donald Trump is insisting is progress still on a larger peace deal with Iran?
Always so, in theory, all of that is continuing, that diplomacy in the background that has been going on for weeks and weeks now. The White House constantly saying that that is their path forward, that diplomatic effort to try and get a negotiated settlement is what they are pushing on, rather than a return to hostilities. Donald Trump, in one of his latest social media posts, saying that final negotiations on peace are proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in the way. But what we are seeing from the United States, once again, is no softening of its stance, because also contained within that social media post, Donald Trump made it clear that US naval blockade against Iranian ports will remain in effect and in full force, he says, until a final deal is reached. But he finished that post by saying that things should move quickly. But I would say it's very hard to read the situation, because Donald Trump has been making very similar statements now for weeks, suggesting that a final peace deal is just around the corner, that somehow Iran and the United States are just moments away from negotiating some sort of settlement that would put them on a much longer-term path to peace. Again, despite this flare-up at the White House, with Donald Trump saying that that is where they are at this stage. But I must admit, it is difficult to read whether or not that's the true situation, considering Donald Trump has made similar assertions in recent weeks.
Blake, Nick mentioning U.S. continued commitment to a full naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, fears now that this could also happen in terms of shipping in the Red Sea, because Yemen's Houthi rebels warning, firing missiles at Israel and warning they could target Israeli shipping and Israeli-linked shipping to the Red Sea.
Well, that's right. This is a very significant development. As the war in Gaza was raging, the Houthi movement in Yemen regularly fired drones and ballistic missiles at Israel and anti-shipping missiles at various ships attempting to pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is off their coast and links to the Red Sea and eventually the Suez Canal. Those attacks stopped when the ceasefire was reached in Gaza of October of last year. And when the full war with Iran began in February, everyone expected the Houthis to join in, along with other Iranian proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq. And when they didn't, people were surprised. It's believed partly because Israel carried out such punishing strikes against the Houthis in Yemen and killed much of their leadership. But the fact remains that the Houthis are Iran's ace up their sleeve, and they do have the power to restrict shipping through that vital lane, both with anti-ship missiles, with small attack boats. And if they are doing that now, if they are joining the war on behalf of Iran, both firing on Israel and interrupting shipping, that could have catastrophic impacts on the global economy, with the Red Sea restricted, while that vital global oil choke point of the Strait of Hormuz, of course, is blocked.
Well, thanks to Blake Sifton for CNN Tel Aviv and Nick Harper in Washington, D.C. Well, it's very hard to read indeed. To help us read these latest developments, we have Anush Ehteshami. He's Professor of International Relations at Durham University in the United Kingdom. Thanks for joining us, Professor. And we're just speaking to our reporters on the ground. Very hard to read. And the latest lines out from Israel, Channel 12 saying that Israel halted strikes on Iran at the request of the US president. One might believe as well that Iran halted attacks also at the request of the US president. Is this how you'd read both sides on this matter, at least conceding?
Absolutely. I don't think Iran wanted to escalate this at all. It's not in its interest. And I always expected that Israel would respond to any pressure from Washington. And President Trump has made it very clear that he's not in favor of escalation, because ultimately he's after what he calls a deal. They have an MOU between Iran and the United States almost ready to exchange. And any disruption like this delays that. And I think that is probably what we're finding in terms of Netanyahu's responses, in that for him to prolong the conflict is a bonus, despite the military cost of it, because it shows that he's continuing to fight Iran indirectly. He's continuing to attack Hezbollah, which has shown how capable it is in attacking Israeli towns and cities and villages, and also to show that he's got a degree of autonomy from America's war aims. I mean, that in many ways is a mirage, because I don't think Israel can maintain a direct confrontation with Iran for a very long time without American support. So on that score, I think the Iranians are right, that Israel cannot carry on like this without some support from the United States. So we have to take that as read from the Iranian side. What the aims are going to be ultimately, I think Israel wants to influence the MOU. It wants to make sure that some of its war aims, control of Iran's missile technology and a program, end of its nuclear program, and also ultimately severing its links with Hezbollah. Hamas is done. It's Hezbollah which remains a problem, or achieved. But they don't tally directly with President Trump's objectives, who has to look at Europe, has to look at Asian partners, but most importantly, his Gulf Arab partners, who are absolutely terrified of another round of escalation because economically they have suffered billions of dollars in damages, financial crisis, transport hubs, ability to export hydrocarbons, whether it's gas or oil, and of course to be able to absorb investment, which is the main developmental strategy.
Professor, in which case this threat from the Houthis in Yemen attacking Red Sea shipping, that would most affect the UAE, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. Now, they've been able to dodge what's happening in Strait of Hormuz because they can ship through an alternative channel. This will be blocked if Houthis then launch the attack. So this really threatens US partners in the Gulf.
Absolutely, directly. But also it goes beyond that. It also affects us in Europe. We are dependent on passage of shipping through Bab al-Mandab and Suez Canal that traverses the Red Sea. And we saw in 2024 and 2025 that actually Israel, the Houthis can do serious damage to flow of shipping. China had to go around the African continent to get access to Europe, which added to our costs and also to their infrastructure costs. So this is in nobody's interest. But for Israel in particular, of course, much of its Asian trade goes through the Red Sea, Bab al-Mandab, where the Yemenis are controlling currently. And that will affect Israel's maritime access. But also, remember, Israel also has a very active navy in both the Mediterranean and on the margins of the Indian Ocean near the Persian Gulf. If they can't get through the Red Sea, it'll be an awfully difficult task to go around the Horn to get them to the Persian Gulf or the Sea of Oman.
Professor Al-Jashami, it's worth pointing out that both sides saying they will halt the attacks and they give their conditions. In Israel's case, if Hezbollah attacks Israeli towns, it will start its attacks again. Iran saying that it will attack again should Israel strike Hezbollah in Lebanon. Both these eventualities are very likely, even as we speak. So this halt in attacks, how long is it going to last? Final question. I can be facetious and say how long is a piece of string, but there is a silver lining. The silver lining is that both parties have seen the sense in de-escalate at the moment. We always assume that Iran has a degree of authority and control, one might say, over Hezbollah, and that if it is in Iran's interest to halt the attacks on Israel, then Iran can apply that influence and pressure on Hezbollah to stop doing this. And if that's Israel's condition, then all well and good. The problem is that Iran may not have full control over Hezbollah. The problem is Iran may not have full control over the Houthis, and that they could act independently, and Israel will see this as escalation by Iran, and then will retaliate, and then we'll be back to square one. For the moment, though, so long as President Trump believes that there's a MOU, a peace deal to be done with Iran, he will put pressure on Israel not to react, even if Hezbollah escalates. By the same token, as Iran also wants to reach a negotiated deal with the United States, they don't see that in their interest to let Hezbollah unleash its missiles again against Israeli targets. So it's in everybody's interest currently to halt escalation and try and de-escalate. But in the absence of direct negotiations that lead somewhere, I'm afraid we may well be back here again, where another miscalculation can lead to another round of escalation. Well, thanks for clearing that up for us, at least for now. Amrush Ehteshami, Professor of International Relations at Durham University in the United Kingdom.